fiscal conservatives have been demanding that that a debt ceiling not be raised. How do you think you'll vote on that?
You know, it depends what we tie it to, and I think that's going to be one of the very critical vote. On one hand, you have the full faith and credit of the United States on the line, and financial institutions will tell you that if we don't do this, there'll be a huge crisis. On the other hand, it's hard to be in favor of raising the debt ceiling. When you have a $14 trillion debt and growing, what we need to do, and we passed the Ryan budget out of the House the last week we were in Congress, and I think that's the plan that we need to focus on getting passed out of the Senate, and hopefully the President will be able to compromise with us on this. But we have to do something. I mean, the current status quo is not acceptable. And you look at the trajectory of the spending under this administration going up, our plan actually brings it down and then starts bringing the debt down eventually. We cannot sustain this course. You know, I think about my father, World War II generation, handing down a better America to my generation. And that's the challenge and responsibility for us, is to hand down a better America to our kids and grandkids. And I think it's almost a moral issue. Are we willing to do nothing and allow this debt to increase to the point where we're going to hand down yet another economic crisis to our kids? Standard & Poor, you know, the S&P is now downgrading, you know, the United States on this issue. I think that Admiral Mullen, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said that this is one of the greatest national security issues we have, is this growing amount of debt. And so we have to make the tough decisions. We have to show political courage on this. And I think we need to have an honest adult conversation about what is really driving the spending. And it's not the discretionary, it's the mandatory entitlement spending that we need to get control over. And we need to modernize and reform a lot of these programs to really save them for future generations. If we do nothing, these programs won't be around. And you know, there's no business that I'm aware of that over 60 years doesn't modernize their business model. And that's what we're trying to do in this budget, is get a handle on these entitlement programs, to give the American people the same health care that we have in Congress, that will allow health care providers to compete for your business. It's a model that worked under the Medicare Part D program, which is 40% under budget, and that's something unheard of in Washington, to have something 40% under budget. I think it drives private sector competition, and again, it's a plan that we have as federal employees. And I think, you know, we can't spin this. We have to be honest about the facts and figures and where we are headed as a nation, and that we have to take on these tough issues.
The former Treasury Secretary, Paul O'Neill, he has said that members of Congress who oppose the, I guess, the increase in the federal debt limit are terrorists when it comes to our credit standing in the world. What do you think?
Well, I mean, it's going to be, I think the key to getting this passed is attaching something that is going to be, you know, whether it's balancing the budget at some point, or some tough measure on cutting spending. I think that's the only way you're going to get something like this passed through the Congress. There's really not a great appetite or political will to raise the debt ceiling. So I think in order to accomplish that, we're proposing various ideas right now. And I know when we return, we'll have our conference, and I think a lot of ideas will come out in terms of what can we attach to this to send a strong statement that we are getting our fiscal house, you know, in order.
What do you think the advantages or disadvantages to having block grants for the Medicaid program here in Texas would be?
I favor that. That's in the Ryan budget, and I think it gives the states greater flexibility, and it empowers the states more, rather than the federal government mandating, telling the states what to do. And I think if you talk to our state elected leaders, they like that idea. I know the governor or lieutenant governor, or a lot of the state senators, representatives, they all like the idea of empowering the state, giving them more flexibility without a lot of strings attached to that. And it also drives these, it's also, 50 states are referred to as 50 different experiments. And I think through that we can have some good models coming out, more creative ideas on how to deal with those dollars. And so I personally like the idea of empowering the states, not attaching a bunch of strings to it. And I think that empowers Texans overall.
What about the state's talk of dipping into its rainy day fund? The Senate committee, just passed wanting to use $3 billion of it. What do you think?
Well, that's a state issue, and that's for them to decide. I am, the state of Texas has survived this storm better than any other state in the union, but we are in an economic crisis. They're in a budget crisis. We are having a rainy day right now. It seems to me. But part of this, I think, was we've imposed so many federal mandates on the state of Texas, and of course the health care, the Obamacare package, I think creates even more of a problem in terms of the billions of dollars that the state has to come up with. And I think that it's the Obamacare that's really driving this budget crisis in the state of Texas. And so I think repealing and replacing that with a health care system that makes more sense and is not so punitive would go a long ways to help the state of Texas.
Would you recommend to the legislature here in the state to use the rainy day fund?
Again, that's for them to decide. I don't know all the details about it. I know they're actually going to pass a budget, I think, this week. And I think that's their decision to make.
Have you had it? Go ahead.
But, I mean, obviously we're having a budget crisis not only in Washington, but in the state of Texas. And so I think having a balanced budget would be a responsible thing to do, and it is a rainy day right now.